You can let the people know. Oh, shoot.
We good? Welcome to City Council meeting. We are going to start our City Council meeting. We had a good discussion about in an open house previous to the meeting about the cemetery. We welcome those that are joining online or joining in person as well too. Let's do, this meeting's being held for the record on October 19th, and we started at 7:15 p.m. Let's start by doing a roll call of council to see if we have a quorum present to conduct business. Let's start with the end with Councilman Ince.
Ince present.
Meekum present.
Ivy present.
Then Councilman McEwen is online, it looks like. Councilwoman Fillmore is asked to be excused. So we do have 4 of the 5 council members present, so we can proceed. We'll start this meeting off with Councilman McEwen with the prayer or thought.
I'd like to reference a speech that was made by Theodore Roosevelt called "The Man in the Arena." It's actually a pretty famous speech. And of course, some of it is dated to its time, and you have to make allowances for that. But this is a quote that I find very interesting from it. It says, "The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief towards all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to a second achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept the contact with life's realities. All these are marks, not as the possessor would feign to think of superiority, but of weakness. They mark men unfit to bear their part painfully in the stern strife of life, who seek in the affection of contempt for the achievements of others to hide from others and from themselves in their own weakness. The role is easy, there is none easier, save only the role of a man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance." I think that holds true today in many ways. That's my thought for today.
Thank you, Councilman. If you'd all rise with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next thing on our agenda is the open session. This is an opportunity to where those that are in person or online, and it should be on your screen if you're online to dial in, and we'll give that a few seconds. Where you have an opportunity to come up front to spend up to a couple of minutes of anything that might be on your mind. So that is now available, and that open session is open.
Good evening, Council. Kyle Green of 433 East, 200 North. Lived in Centerville too long and too many addresses. I have to think about it. I'd like to make comment tonight on 2 things. The first is item number 2 on the agenda tonight, which is the discussion of the pickleball courts at Smith Park. I guess these 2 are actually related. I would like to just voice my opposition to putting pickleball courts at Smith Park. Not generally against pickleball. I think it's a great sport. I think it'd be better suited down at the park closer to Home Depot and Target, where we already have facilities that are similar in nature with the basketball court and other sporting opportunities there. Primarily because I would like to see the 4th of July return to the Smith Park, or formerly known as Founders Park. It has been a tradition, a long-standing tradition in Centerville, to be here in the center of our city, not on the fringes, not on the north end, but in the center of our city, right by City Hall, where everything is close, from the police department and the fire department being really close by, as well as easy access for all those in the community, particularly those who live here on the south end in what we consider the high-density areas. The same people that are being talked about to be served via bus or other things because they don't have reliable modes of transportation are being alienated by moving the central event of our city somewhere where they don't have easy access of transportation to get to. Right now, where we have such high population density in this area, it's very easy for those people to walk and to access our 4th of July. With the purchase and acquisition of Port Randall's property, I believe that there is more than ample room between what ground is here behind City Hall, the ground at the park, and the ground at the school to house the people that want to attend our 4th of July that are citizens of our city. There's been a lot of talk about making it bigger and better and attracting others from other places and to become something more akin to up at Eaglewood, to be a big event. And honestly, I don't want that out of our 4th of July. It's always been a small, close-knit community event where you show up and see your friends who are here with their families celebrating, that many traditions have been built off of for the last many years. I would rather see the money and the efforts be put into accommodating this park, which was designed specifically with the 4th of July in mind when they designed the pavilion the way that they did. I would like to see it remain here. And I also bring that from many of my neighbors who don't have the ability to come here to city council meeting or to log on to the internet, but there's a great many down here in what many have called the south end of Centerville, object to the moving of it to the community park. And I think that it's one of those things that really ought to be discussed and looked at before we look at making major improvements to the current Smith Park until that part of the issue has been resolved as to whether or not the 4th of July is going to be permanently moved somewhere else or if it's going to be coming back here. I think that would have a great impact on what decisions are made on the building and designing of facilities here at Smith Park. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We look forward to that discussion tonight. There won't be a vote on it, but it'll be just a discussion. Further comment from those online or here in person? Nobody online? Okay, we've probably given them enough time then. So we will move on from the open session.
We've got one more, Mayor.
Oh, is there somebody? Sure. Just identify yourself and where you're from.
I'm Phil Landerton, 251 North, 500 East, just east of here. Kind of like to second what address you, Mayor, and the City Council. I'd like to just reiterate what Kyle just said. I mean, it's tradition, and to me, tradition is important. And I'm probably going to call this park Founders Park for many more years. And it's home. It's home for the 4th of July, and we hope to keep that tradition and keep it home.
Thank you, Phil. Anybody else? Don't want to close it too quick. Nobody else come online during that time? All right, then we will close the open session and let's move to the item number E, the business of the meeting. Let's look at the first item being the discussion of additional changes to the internal ADU ordinance. And we have Corey here and is also Lisa to talk about those changes we made. Which one of you wants to come up? Corey?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a follow-up from just a couple of weeks ago or so where you adopted the internal ADU ordinance partly for our moderate income housing goals and partly the state made some changes that required for municipalities to address. I tried to provide just a memo. intend to take a lot of time unless you have questions about it. There were 3 items that I recall, so hopefully I covered them. The first one was the ownership residency issue. There was a discussion, you decided that 50% of ownership, I think that was a fairly common, that's what it was adopted and seemed to be fairly common, but the question became, I believe from Councilman McEwen, about what is the state law and residency and so forth. So in your background section on your Novus agenda, I copied the state code. When a person wants to claim their resident home as a primary residence so that they get the reduction in tax benefit on a home, the home has to be occupied for 183 days. So I put you 3 days over the 6 month. Ours is adopted at 6 months. Currently, the residency or the primary ownership is at 183 days, so you wouldn't be able to claim one in southern Utah and one in northern Utah as a residency. And so that's what state law had talked about. Your second item was the temporary leave. That seemed to be a little bit more discussion. There seemed to be concerns on whether we had too many allowances for temporary leave or were they sufficient in their definition. And so that was discussed. And then the third item was the termination provisions, and I included at the bottom of that the second kitchen letter. I'm a little more prepared to answer those questions if you want to get in detail about the termination matter and why it's from staff's perspective, maybe a different element than maybe somebody who lives in a home and typically builds a kitchen type facility in their basement. But those were the 3 items I recall, and so really it's open for your discussion. If you're looking at some changes, we would, if they're substantive here, other than my double slash in the memo that I got reminded about, if there's changes, we would retake those back through the planning commission at whatever you direct us to do. So with that, I kick it back to the mayor and the council. Discussion, questions?
Thanks, Corey. So the ones he just highlighted, is everybody good with what's been done there, and did we miss anything?
Corey, I have a question. So the 183 days, if I live in a single family residence and I go to St. George for half the year, I can rent my house out right now. But if I have my basement rented out as an ADU, can I rent the top part of it out while I'm in St. George?
You're right, correct, that was part of the discussion to it, and that's a complicated answer because state law is not really clear on it either. State law is basically saying an internal ADU has to be rented for 30 days or longer in order it to not be counted as a short-term rental. But it doesn't define the issue of your home, and we don't define how large or small an ADU is. And state law specifically says we can't define the size of it. And so now it's coming into the issue of which one's defined as the internal ADU. And under our ordinances, they would submit a permit and show which one is the ADU, whether it's a top portion of a house, a bottom portion of a house, if it's the left or the right side, or an addition. And that's what we'd count as the ADU internally. And that's what I would interpret under state law. That's what we're enforcing to be rented for 30 days or longer. So it's the issue of collection of rent, right? But it's also the issue of who owns the home that's associated with it, because the owner of the home is a different tenant than the renter. And we're going to be looking at the rental part of it for 30 days or longer. So now it gets to what your question is. Now I've got the ADU defined by the permit. So can I leave for a period of time and rent the other portion of the home? And the answer is question mark.
So can we address that?
You could.
I don't know if you want to, in state law it doesn't.
Except that you could be creating duplex as opposed to ADUs, because I go to St. George and I rent the top of my house out and I'm renting the basement out, and so then I've got a duplex as opposed to.
Not short-term rental for 30 days or less, but you have a short-term duplex within a period of a year.
Right, so for 180 days out of the year, I live in St. George. So I rent the upstairs to my house out for 180 days, and I've got the basement rented too. So now I've created a duplex.
So if you put in the 183 days, the matching the state code, you solve the split month issue for the residency, but now somebody still says, I'm leaving for 4 months in southern Utah during the winter, and I'm renting the upper portion out during the 4 months. We're probably running into the same problem, and I don't think anybody's come up with a solution of that I know of to date. My only check, just thinking broad storm, is we can't tell somebody they have to buy or rent a place. When you buy your home, you can buy it to rent it, or you can buy it to live in it.
Right.
It's your residency issue of how your taxation goes. And I would want to make sure that we would consult with the Fair Housing Act on the federal level to make sure we don't run in.
But I'm just saying, if you have an ADU rented out in a single-family home, you can't rent out the other part of the home. Is that something we could state, just like that? If you have an ADU in your home and it is rented out, then you may not rent any other part of your home.
Now, I think that's what I'm trying to get at in a different way is that you can probably put that regulation in to control it. We need to check it against some of federal law and so forth to make sure we don't run into a
But you've
fair housing violation.
You've specifically given a provision that they can be gone for up to 3 years with a second 3-year extension to accommodate for people who are going to leave primarily for church missions.
True.
True.
So you're
Running
stepping
into-
on that if you do what you're talking about.
That's true.
I guess it's possible that somebody goes to St. George for 6 months and wants to rent the portion of their house while they're gone. But I sure don't see that very often. It's pretty rare.
I don't see that. I'm not worried about that. I'm trying to look at every loophole that some landlord people, some landlords, not most landlords, but there's a few that go through every hole there is to, and so that's my concern, is I just don't want to leave any loopholes to where we get, people coming in and buying the house. But I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that.
Notation understood and welcome to state law.
Maybe I'll have to move up,
Move up.
More for Corey?
make the state
So
laws.
do we need it to go back to the planning commission to change it to 183 days?
I believe that would be a change of terms to recommend.
That would be good then.
Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so.
Yes, if you're going to change 180 to 183, it would have to go back through as an amendment.
Okay, so I think we want that.
We should do that.
And we want the 50% or greater ownership to go back.
That adopted at 50%.
Oh, okay.
I was just showing you the occupancy and the day, so you had an understanding of.
So is that the only thing that we actually needed to send back?
I thought so.
If 3 of you want that.
I believe that's the only thing.
Okay.
You want a motion on that, Lisa, or just instruction? You have a motion, Robin, you want to bring?
So moved.
You
Second,
want me to state it so you can do it, so moved?
I move that we ask the planning commission to review this and make it aligned with the state requirement of 183 days of occupancy.
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Further discussion? If not, let's take a vote from each of you. Councilman Ince.
Aye.
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 That motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Corey. All right, let's move to item number 2. This is discussion of pickleball courts at Smith Park. This is a discussion, like I mentioned earlier, this is coming before us because we do have some land freed up and determining what to do with that land. You see your background on it. Bruce, do you want to come up? Do you want me to read this background, or I imagine you put this here, or do you want to discuss some of these issues?
Bruce Cox,
Maybe we should
Parks and
say
Recreation
who
Director. Brant asked me to put together information about the pros of considering pickleball courts at the Randall property. And so I put together just a bullet point there of things that I thought were pros or advantages of why that would be a good choice to put it there. If you have questions about those, or we could run through them each, I'd be happy to explain more, or just answer any questions if you have a question about one of those bullet points, or.
I think it would be great, Bruce, if you actually went through.
I do too.
Sure.
That'd be great.
I was going to say, I read them all, and they made good sense. I just wanted to know why we didn't include any cons. Because nothing's 100%
Right.
one way or the
Right.
other.
And I wasn't asked for that, but I can think of some if you want.
That would be great.
Go through the pros and then the cons that are on your head, but I'm
Okay.
sure some other cons will be brought up.
So let's start, you can see that's a concept design. I asked ESI Engineering if they could put together a foot, so I could see how they might fit. If we could fit 8 pickleball courts using the Randall property and the property just west of the City Hall pump house. And so there's a concept plan of how we could do 8 competition what do you call it? I think they call them competition size courts with walkways, lights, park benches, landscaping around it. So that's a concept of how that could fit, how that layout could work. Any questions on that? Okay, before you change from that, but I'll ask you in a minute if you'll go to my bullet points. If you do that for me, Jennifer, thank you.
Just go to.
No, not right now, but
But is this what you're talking about?
Those are the
Yeah,
bullet
those are your
points. He
bullet
still wants
yes,
to.
yes. If you look on the top of the diagram, you'll see the sidewalk kind of dead end. That would connect with the existing park sidewalk that runs between the playground and the parking lot. There would be an additional 5 parking spaces that would be part of that design that would be added to the existing 40-plus parking stalls that are in the park and the existing City Hall parking. If you look, the sidewalk comes through over here to the other end, and that's the driveway this north driveway that comes around City Hall and goes out to 100 East. So it would connect sidewalks between the park and City Hall. That also has a sidewalk on the east side that would go along the sidewalk.
Okay,
Which,
so Bruce, I know that I'm not looking at this like I should. We always talked about having a big sidewalk going from City Hall, kind of in between Pork's property and Ron's property, to connect it over to the park. Is this leaving room on Pork's property for that sidewalk?
okay, so I don't know what you mean by we always talk about a big sidewalk, but the sidewalk that exists in front of the park is on 100 East.
On 100 East?
Is a wide, that's what you're talking about, a wide,
No, I'm
5-foot wide
talking about
sidewalk?
one from the parking lot.
Okay.
The way I always understood that they wanted to connect City Hall with the park, so people could park here in City Hall.
Oh, sure.
And walk over to the park. And
Sure.
that there was going to be like a sidewalk, probably half onto Pork's property and half onto Ron's property through that
Oh,
area.
okay.
Does this leave enough room on the property that we've purchased for that sidewalk to go through?
Yeah, so maybe I can use the pointer. So, so you're saying like shortest distance. So right here's City Hall right here.
Right,
This is the property line. This is Ron's here.
Right.
This is so yes, a sidewalk right through here could be as wide or as big as you want. It comes right over the park. And then this, which in this design shows just stopping right here, you would connect and then take you right up to the parking lot here. So that would be one. But then in this design, already you see this connects from the parking across and connects to the parking lot out here at City Hall also. So there could be a future connection of what you're talking about, but then this design also has a connection made for that, for people who are using this parking lot to access the park or the pickleball courts, or for people in an overflow situation for City Hall to come from the parking lot over to City Hall. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question, thank you.
Any other questions on the concept?
No.
I do? Okay.
I was pleased to see the orientation of the courts.
What's that?
I
North,
was
south?
pleased to see that they are north-south
Well, you
courts.
know,
It's true.
I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but
Kevin?
at ESI, the person who helped me
Cody?
draw.
Cody.
Cody. Public Works Director's calling me. I mean, he knows he's supposed to be here. Cody was not aware of that, and we went through several different layouts and designs before I said, no, this is what I'm looking for, and that was one of the things. I was like, all the courts need to go north and south, so.
There was discussion about some courts being 5 degrees off was a concern and a frustration from the pickleball court community, which was kind of fascinating.
So let's go to the points of why this makes good sense, why this would be a good idea. And I need my glasses. Okay.
Here, is that better?
The demand. First of all, the reason why we're even talking about pickleball courts is there's a demand for pickleball courts. We are constantly, there's a active community that loves this. It appeals to a really large audience. Little kids have a great time playing pickleball. There's a large community of elderly people that love this sport. It's easier on the knees than tennis is, but still has, and it's very social. People are close enough that they can talk and socialize while they play. It appeals to the college age group and the young adults. It has a large demand and has for quite some time. I remember going to one of my conferences 10 years ago down in St. George, where they had just put in some new pickleball courts, and that they were saying how popular they were with the college age kids and also the seniors that live there. And there was the question, is this just a little fad that's going to pass? And I think we've seen that it's not. It's actually a sport that's really caught on. I think it's West Jordan or South Jordan just put in a 40-court complex. We have West Bountiful City just put in new pickleball courts and right next to their city hall. Woods Cross City Hall also has pickleball courts and tennis courts right as part of its city hall complex also. So I think we're seeing, and the demand that we see at the Farmington Station, or Farmington Gymnasium has put in 8 courts and has pretty regularly people waiting to get onto a court there. So I think the demand is there, and that's why we're talking about it.
If I can add to that, Bruce, with the Farmington is an example of the residents have priority over anybody else. So it's not a matter of our residents can go over there and use their courts. There is a waiting list and they don't actually get on
And the
there.
reason for making that even a rule is because there's a high demand.
And
So-
there's no doubt about the demand, because over at Farmington Court, you will find at least a couple of our residents playing almost any time of the day.
So can I ask about that? Does Farmington have sign-up things?
So-
You sign up in advance rather than you show up and play if there's an empty court?
So from what I understand, there's a sign up and you can wait and maybe someone doesn't show up and then you get the spot. So you can wait for someone not to show up for their.
Good to know.
I know a lot of courts will have a rack that you put your paddle on the rack that says you're next in line to play on that court, and there'll be a rack of 8, so up to 8 different sets of players are waiting to play on a court by putting their paddles up. So I don't think there's any question there is a demand, and if any of you haven't played, you should. I'll loan you some paddles. It really is a fun game. It's fun to play. I played with my little boy. I played with my young adult children, and I played with. As a matter of fact, the most avid players are the elderly. If there's someone that's over age 60 at one of these courts, be careful accepting to play a game with them, because they are really good and they will tell you if you break one of the rules, and they know all of the rules. So.
We did a field trip early on while I was in there.
That's right.
We got a
I was there.
couple of
That's
them
right.
playing,
Short memory. Okay. Next, the city owns the property. That's a huge plus here. We actually are hoping to do something at the community park in the wetland area, but we're dragging through with a wetland consultant to get permission to mitigate that property, to then move forward with developing that property, which is going to take some time. This property we already own, so that's a huge benefit.
And there's no restrictions on this property. The city bought it, they didn't have any strings attached, so the city can do with it what they want. So that's a great positive part of doing it. Next one I've got up there is,
Bruce, before you move off of that one,
yeah,
quick question, if my memory serves me correctly, we're still awaiting a land swap with the county relative to the land there at Smith Park and the land at the library. So we just have a little island that we own and the rest is county land?
Yeah, so the county does own the property, Smith Park. They do own that, and then we own where the library sits. And we have talked about a land swap. Curtis, with the county, and I have had this conversation, but COVID hit, and we have not revisited this conversation. But that is a great reminder. Thank you for bringing that up. We do need to figure out that land swap with the county.
And the reason I brought that up is I would feel better about putting amenities in if we have a contiguous piece that we own.
Most
So-
of this is on the Randall property, which we
none
do
of this
own.
none of this is
None of this
affected
is
by
on
that, and only half of the existing William R. Smith Park is county, and it's the north half. The south half was donated by William R. Smith. So that does not affect this at all. The next part I have in bold there, it says already existing adjacent facilities. That's a huge plus in that where we're thinking of developing at the west end of the community park, we also need to put in restrooms. We're talking about putting in maybe a small younger children's playground and some additional parking. This property has parking lots on both sides. It has restrooms right next to the area where we're talking about building courts, and it has a playground. And I feel that these facilities are underused. I think all of them you would get more use out of your existing facilities, more bang for your buck by putting something in that would give the restrooms a little more use, give the playground more use, give the parking lots more use. So I think that those are, and I kind of listed these, weighted them. These are some of the big reasons why this is a good idea. As we get farther down, there's lesser reasons, but there's still some good reasons. Next one down, lighting. You want to light your pickleball courts so you get the most use out of them, because we get dark at 6:30 in October, and on good weather days, those courts could still be played on for several more hours. But lighting is an issue at parks because you don't want to impede the neighbors with lights, and so we put regulations that we turn them off at 10 o'clock at night. This property is ideal because it has the city hall right next to it that already has parking lot lights that are on all night long, that are higher level lights than would be needed for pickleball courts. Pickleball court lights could be shorter poles and not necessary to do as high lights as what we already have on the adjacent property.
But it would require lighting specifically on the courts.
For sure. It just lighting would not be a nuisance to City Hall or to the park or to Ron's service station or to the schoolyard. Then right after that is noise buffer. Pickleball courts generate noise, and that noise can be a nuisance to residents or neighbors that are close to pickleball courts. So I got out my measuring wheel, and the closest residence wall is over 160 feet away from the closest point of a pickleball court. There are no adjacent residents to this property. As I mentioned, you've got Ron Randall to the west and Main Street, you've got City Hall to the south, you've got the Smith Park to the north, and you've got the school's playground open fields to the east.
So Bruce, is the noise more the ball and the playing, or is it just the people?
It's just the ball hitting the paddle. When the ball hits the paddle, it makes a pop sound, and it's not it's not going to hurt anyone's ears, but it is when you've got a lot of people playing on the course. If you go down to Farmington, you'll see that you can hear the pickleball going on. It's not louder than traffic on Main Street, but it's still an issue that you need to consider when you're building courts, is that, hey, we don't want to create a noise nuisance until 10 o'clock every night for somebody right in their backyard.
They do have the sound dampeners you can hang from the fence, or
There's some things you can do.
there are some things that help, but it,
That would be good.
But that's one of the reasons why this is a great location for that, is there are very few parks that we have that don't have residents backed right up to them and things that would put courts closer. Next one, water conservation. This year's been that's been a hot topic, been on everybody's mind is conserving water. Shut off irrigation water this year in September, a month earlier than normal. Pickleball court, the design the concept design would use 1/10 of the water that this would require if we were to put it into grass and trees, green space. You would be putting 10 times the amount of water on that area to keep it irrigated and keep it green. So that's a consideration. And like I say, these are lesser considerations, but they're still positive reasons why. Next one down.
ongoing maintenance.
Reduced ongoing maintenance. The ongoing maintenance of pickleball courts is you blow them off when they get some leaves on them or dirty. There's not a lot that you have to do every week on the pickleball courts, whereas lawns, you do. You've got to mow the lawns every week. You've got to spray for weeds in the spring and later on spot spray. You've got to fertilize in the spring and the fall. You've got to irrigate and maintain your irrigation system. There's it's probably equal to the use of water, and I'm using about 1/10. I think the maintenance of pickleball courts and the landscaping around would be about 1/10 of the time that would be required to mow that lawn every week, irrigate that lawn, fertilize, treat for weeds, do all the different things that you have to do with a half acre of grass and trees. Other opportunities. This was just one actually that Bryce brought up. Bryce had brought up to me that being right across the street from an elementary school, there's an opportunity for the school to take their kids out for a PE class and teach them how to play pickleball. That's not something other schools have readily available to them without having to go for a walk or a field trip. This could be something they do, just like going out and teaching the kids how to play kickball in the field or something else. They could do some pickleball classes and teach elementary school kids. And I think we might see the other opportunities too, recreation related that Bryce had mentioned. Being right here at City Hall and things that they could look at doing a residence tournament right before the movies in the park or something in the summertime or something like that. So just some other opportunities that this location might lend itself to versus if we were to build the same thing somewhere else.
That's a great question that you just put forth there. So we are doing movies in the park. Are we shutting down the pickleball courts during movies?
So the movies in the park, unfortunately, can't start until it's dark enough to see the movie on the screen. And in the summer months, it's about 9 o'clock and sometimes 9:15. And we would be setting the timers on those clocks for like we do at our other courts for 10 o'clock. And so what we would probably do is on the 5 Friday nights that we do movies in the park, the lights on the pickleball courts would probably turn off at 9 o'clock when the movie starts rather than letting them go that extra hour on those 5 nights. So, yeah. But, we could play, give it a try too and see, is it an issue? Does people sitting over in the park watching a movie and other people playing on the pickleball courts, do they interfere with each other? That might be something we do a test and see if it is even an issue. But if it is an issue, we control the light timer and we can turn off the lights when the movie starts.
So to address Councilmember Ivey's question, I do, and I've shared these with Bruce as we prepared this discussion, and some of the concerns or cons that are out there is the 4th of July discussion that Kyle brought up has been absolutely brought up until that's finalized. That just needs to be finalized and where we're putting it before we take up more green space. But all the points that Bruce has brought up are all critical, and the demand is there, and we can't wait for the wetland mitigation. That's just taking far longer to get through that federal government process. That I think there is a need to identify a place for these pickleball courts, whether it's this park or another location, but we need to get a little bit more aggressive on where we find a space, right, Bruce? And so this has just been popped up. This is more of just an issue, a discussion now, because we have not developed the property over there yet, and Bruce is needing some direction on, is it full-blown irrigation, or are we saving some money and only putting irrigation in certain spots? And that's why this has become a discussion for now. Some of my thoughts are again, the 4th of July, maintaining the civic complex, right? We have City Hall here, and one day in 20 years, we might have a public safety building or a new City Hall, and trying to keep everything on this property, for me, would be something to consider long-term. And if you lose that spot over there, then that's just green space, an opportunity we lose for development of buildings. And we have the pole barn that's been discussed. So we have competing interests and projects on this area, and this would just be adding another project to this area.
Isn't the pole barn over on Whitaker's property?
Potentially on that piece over there, but again, it's just another, we have essentially 3 sections here, right, to work from on future structures, but maintaining this as a civic complex, so we don't need to find land anywhere else if we were to build any more city buildings or replace city buildings in the future. So that's been the big point. And the noise, the 160 feet, I would need to know what that sounds like 160 feet away. We want to make sure we don't
I can tell you what it sounds like from farther.
So I think having that exercise, seeing what those sound dampeners do, I saw it up in Boise when I was up there. They had them on there, and they're pretty thick, and I think they did a pretty good job dampening the noise. But you still have that escape over the fence. And of course, each court's kind of closed off, so it's not an open fill anymore, but that's irrelevant. But yeah, even sound dampeners on the fences up there, and Island View Park should be considered, that we need to talk about, Bruce.
Yeah, I think that's.
It separates activities at parks. I mean, you got Island View with volleyball and pickleball and tennis. You got Smoot with tennis and volleyball. You got the community park with tons of baseball and football and soccer and volleyball. So, you know, it kind of spreads the activities out a bit, doesn't it?
Councilman Fillmore.
And I don't know how much an issue that is.
You bring up a good point. Councilman Fillmore, I guess, had done a little kind of quick map study of where existing courts are, and this fits really well with that in that there is a gap between other existing courts, and this would fit in a good spot. I would say it also gives you a good feel if the city was to move forward, and like Brant said, you wouldn't have to wait. We think with the contingency of RAP tax that you'd have more than enough for a match. You could apply for a grant. You could go ahead and do this. Kaysville City had 50% of all the funds for their pickleball courts raised by residents' private donations, and the other half the city paid, and they didn't use any. They didn't have to wait on a grant. This is something you could move on quickly, and then after you have it, you would be able to test and see what is the demand. Do we need more, or is this sufficient for our city's needs? And if it is sufficient, then the area we're trying to mitigate for wetlands mitigation opens it up for other possibilities.
How many courts would we get down there if we mitigated that wetlands?
So I
12.
also have a concept plan of that, the same thing, an 8-court block of 8 courts with some additional parking. We have an issue that in that design, we have to consider the widening of I-15. So in the design we've designed, in the concept plan, is designed to accommodate a 60-foot encroachment of the frontage road and sidewalk that'll be coming our way, UDOT says. I think we'll be learning more about that pretty soon here. We have a walkthrough coming up the first part of November of the Centerville overpass changes and things that will be happening. So anyway, 8 courts is also what we were shooting for down there also. And some additional parking, which would actually just be kind of replacing a bunch of the parking we're going to lose. So
I think this has got a lot of potential. I would like to see us, I mean, like we said, we're just discussing it tonight, but I'd like to have a work meeting where we, discuss it a little more, discuss anywhere, other places, so that we don't put them here and then think, oh, we should have done this, or, I definitely am pro pickleball. I want us to get our courts. So I think it's a great idea. I think we just need to look at all of our
I can tell you, at our Freedom Hills Park, the master plan is for courts and of different types, basketball courts, tennis court, whatever kind of courts that seems to be the most demand for. So that's definitely a consideration. And then, same thing, the master plan of the community park shows a whole complex of tennis courts or more courts to go in there too, that were master planned when the park was originally designed with a concept plan, but have, we got them usable and have never finished out those plans. And so those are considerations, but I can tell you the Parks and Rec Committee all unanimously support the idea of putting them here and feeling next to City Hall and the advantages of already having restrooms, already having the playgrounds and things here. Those kinds of things make it so it's a better choice than even in the places where we've already designated that these are some places we'd like to add some more amenities.
So we brought it before you because if there was some discussion, yeah, we realized we'd probably have further discussion in the work session. We just wanted to see the feel because Bruce
Right.
wanted to get a feel of, we don't want to spend money on irrigation and then
Right.
waste it.
When would you be doing that?
So right now, this is a great time of year. We winterize all of our irrigation systems. We lock up winterize our restrooms, and we have started putting up Christmas lights. But oftentimes, depending on the weather, we have some gaps of time between burials and things in the cemetery when we could work on installing an irrigation system this fall and have it ready to go next spring when water comes on again. And we want to be able to plant as soon as we can next spring in order for it to get established by summertime. If there are going to be, and I anticipate there will be some activities, events going on ongoing, and that's another thing. I think pickleball courts will help increase the attendance of other activities, like our movie in the park, or like the pumpkin walks and the Festival of Lights, because there'll be more people familiar with coming to City Hall that maybe hadn't been here for other things, but it's like, oh yeah, that's the park right next to the pickleball course we go to all the time. So I think it will synergize and make some of our other park events that we hold at that park more attended, better used.
Speaking of that, not to change the subject, but I was notified that our restrooms here in Centerville are already locked. Is that other cities aren't and ours are? Is there a reason why we pick ours now?
So all cities that don't have furnaces or heat in their restrooms have to winterize their restrooms as soon as water freezes, and it's always the 15th of October is usually when they turn off the irrigation water, and you winterize your irrigation systems, you winterize anything that's outdoors that could freeze or cause damage, you have to do in October. And we already had some freezing nights. I've had people call me and say, hey, it's such a warm, sunny day and the bathrooms are locked. Yes, it's a warm, sunny day, but tonight it's going to drop below freezing, and your drinking fountains and all of your fixtures all have to be blown out. It's a process. It takes time. You have to hook up an air compressor, blow out all of your plumbing, blow out all your fixtures. Then you add antifreeze to any trap, so all of your floor drains, all of your toilets, all of your sinks all have to have antifreeze put in them, and it has to be winterized and locked up. You can't just turn the water back on and open up your bathrooms and then close them back up again at night. That process has always happened. I think as a matter of fact, everyone that's called me has been someone who's moved here from a warmer climate and doesn't realize we have freezing temperatures that start in October. And we actually got burned a year before last. We still had a football tournament at the community park. We thought, they really need those bathrooms. Let's leave them open till Halloween. And you remember we had temperatures in the teens. We broke our water lines into our drinking fountains. We had to spend some money on some plumbing repairs, and we learned our lesson that no, we really do need to winterize the restrooms starting October 15th. And so it's always been that way. And unless the city wants to put furnaces in our park restrooms and heat them all winter long, there's not, which I think would be silly. Your park, your baseball season's over. Football's over this Saturday. Soccer, they're a little crazy. They'll still keep playing through the winter months, but there's no regular season soccer games or soccer going on. So the activity at the parks dramatically drops. It gets dark starting, we hit daylight savings here in November. It's dark after 5 o'clock. I don't think you would ever realize the benefits of heating all your restrooms in order to keep them open. And your seasonal staff is all gone. You've got to, which staffing is a growing problem. How do you get around and clean all of your restrooms in November and December when you don't have any set staff to do that?
I was just curious. I was sure we had a good reason. I just had a couple of phone calls.
Well, and I bet you'll get more because this week was October 15th, and so we started all of our winterizing process, and we put signs on all the doors so that people don't just think they're just locked.
Right.
They realize these are winterized for the season.
Okay.
Our football, Little League football is playing their playoff games this Saturday, and I let them know a month ago that, hey, come October 15th, I was looking at the long-range forecast. It is going to be getting colder. We can't risk leaving them open. You're going to have to arrange for porta potties. And so down at the community park right now, there's 5 porta potties that are brought in by the Ute Conference Viewmont District for their games that'll be this Saturday.
Okay, very interesting. Good.
So it sounds like, do you guys like moving forward with this and getting a work session on it?
Yep.
As soon as possible? More questions for Bruce, more comments?
Bruce and I will go over maybe 3, we'll try and identify 3 locations, immediate locations, maybe some long-term locations, including community park. That's what we'll try and come back with as some recommendations.
Yeah. I do think the centralized location, you'd get more people using them if they were here, but I'm not opposed to putting them, like I say, they're planned for the other parks, but I think you'd probably get more bang for your buck if you put them here.
Bruce, thanks for all your work. Thanks for the update on that. Thanks for
Can I have one
being
other
right on
question?
top of the discussion about winterizing our bathrooms too.
On the south side of this complex, south side of the parking lot, there's a fairly wide strip of grass. How wide is that?
Right by the pump station?
South side of William R. Smith parking?
No, of.
The one over here,
Between us and Whitaker.
Okay. So it's a little more narrow where there is parking, and then it widens up as you get closer out to 100 East. It's, I'm guesstimating, but it's probably, it's the width of your lot. I would say it's 80 feet wide. Yeah, it's the width of your home lot. Isn't about the same from the driveway of City Hall to the property owner's property line?
Yeah, probably not quite as big.
It's about the width of a residential lot. I would say it's roughly 80 feet. And I could be off 20 feet.
That's
either
fine,
way.
I just,
Yeah.
give me just,
And then it's probably 3 times that long.
pretty similar to what you're talking about. Maybe you couldn't get 8. What was it, 8 or 10? 8. But you could get 6.
You could put a few over there. And, I didn't put that on as one of the list things, but if you decided that it didn't meet the demand and you created even a greater demand, there is some possibilities for expansion here on this City Hall property.
On the other hand, the
Of either
irrigation
more-
is already in over there and not over here.
Right.
Either
And over
more
there
park-
would be more problematic with the neighbors because you have houses.
For sure.
Closer to it,
For
it's
sure.
true.
And, but there is possibility of additional parking. But if we needed to expand parking, we have that as an option here on the City Hall property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, let's talk exciting stuff. I love it. Financial statements. That's my field. Let's go, Nate. We're ready to hear from you. Nate will give us the quarterly financial report.
I'm gonna try to connect here. Give me a second. Thinking.
Is there a reason they're not attached?
What's that?
Is there a reason they are not attached?
Well, I thought it was. Did I not get it attached?
No, I
The
don't.
financials, they were not in the packet.
Oh. Well, that's probably user error on my end then. I apologize. I thought I did attach it, and I think I can go back and attach it. I don't know.
Yeah, it made the packet a lot shorter.
Yeah.
That's usually the bulk of it.
to you real quick, Jennifer.
It's, Councilmember Ince, it's about 85 feet, according to Google Earth. From the parking lot side, so it's a little bit more beyond the parking. An additional 20 feet.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up.
Perfect. My apologies for not having that on the packet. I thought I did, I'm sorry.
Here, we were looking forward to some light reading, but
Well, it'll be here for you tonight.
thank you.
All right. So as Mayor said, this is our first quarter financial report. So there's not a ton to report on. So hopefully I can be brief enough that you don't fall asleep. Jennifer, you can go to the next page. So this shows all of our fund cash balances. You can see our total cash in the right-hand column is at just over 9 million, and that is about $1.5 million more than it was in September of 2020. That is in large part due to receiving the ARPA funds, and probably a few other factors, and sales tax probably played a decent role in that as well. And you can see our general fund is sitting at a little over 4 million in cash as well. If you go to the next page, there you can see our ARPA funds that we received at just over $1 million. And again, that played a role in our cash increasing over last year. The next page. So this page is looking at our general fund revenues. A couple things I wanted to point out here is that the property tax numbers look really low, and that's because we received the majority of our property taxes in November and December. So next time I'm here giving this report, we should see that increase quite a bit. A couple other things to note is that our sales tax is above what we're expecting. We're at 29% of our budgeted revenue for sales tax. Again, we're 25% through the year. In sales tax, we have received about $200,000 more so far this year than we did over this time last year. We had a really good month last month. Our revenues, our total revenues are showing at 23%. Again, it's lower than 25%, but we haven't received our property tax, so I think we're in good shape there. And if you look at the year-to-date actual column, again, we're about $200,000 more in actuals this year over this time last year. So I think our revenues are doing just fine. Below that is the general fund expenditures. That's the summary of each department in the general fund. You will see that there are a couple departments that have gone over the 25%, but I don't think it's a big concern because they're small dollar amounts, so I don't think it's a major concern at all. Most of them are under the 25%. And if you look down at the bottom, total expenditures out of the general fund, so far this year we're sitting about 22% of budgeted expenditures. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that we are the $85,000 that's in the box there. That's our net income, that's our revenues over expenses, and so we're at a positive $85,000. Then if we go to the next page, I believe, just to touch on a couple of our other funds, the RDA fund looks really low. We get the majority of our revenue and expenses come in the spring. They collect the property taxes and then they distribute that to us a few months later. So that will remain pretty low until March or April. A little bit lower, if we look at the RAP tax fund, that's sales tax related. Since we've seen that increase in sales tax, our RAP tax has gone up a little bit, which we're pleased about. Then let's see, oh, it's on the next page. I just want to touch on the water fund. The capital projects portion of that, which is in that box, that is a little bit higher, and that's just due to the seasonal work. Remember that we're looking at July, August, and September on these financials, and so that's when a big portion of our water construction happens. So that's why that's a little high. We'll expect that to kind of even out over the winter months. But if you look at our operational line, which is right above the box, we're at 23%, so our water operations is right on target as well. And then the rest of the funds are just right on target, right where we expected them to be. Nothing major to report. That's all I had, so is there any questions?
So Nate, I'd like next month or next time you do this, when you get them out to us, I'd like these highlights, and then we'll have those in front of us, and it gives us these areas. Because those are the kind of things I look at, a percentage of where we should be at in the year. If it's a $5,000 amount you've gone over, there's usually an explanation, but it's a larger amount, then there's concern. But so I'd like that highlighting you did.
Yeah, and Marcus did help us out with this, so thank you to Marcus.
Further questions for Nate on that? Thank you. All right.
Although I may call you up once I've looked at it closely.
Sounds good.
Let's go to item number 4. This is minutes review and acceptance for the October 5th City Council minutes and the October 5th closed session minutes. Do we have any changes or discussion on these minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 5 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Let's go to item number 5. This is our chance for one of our council representatives report tonight. It's Councilman Ince's term. Do you have anything, Councilman, you'd like to pass on to us?
I don't have a lot to report tonight. We are making an effort. We're in the middle of planning a November emergency activity. Information will be coming out on it soon. We also have decided that we need to kind of do a restart on our CERT team. Combination of 20 years of aging and move-outs. We have not been able to replace CERT volunteers, and so a letter will be going out this week to primarily the various churches looking for volunteers for the CERT team.
Are you contacting the previous CERT members as well?
We have already attempted to.
Have not been contacted.
You haven't?
I have not. And I am one. If that indicates a glitch.
Well, it's probably less indicative of a glitch than it is that somebody didn't totally follow up, but I will ask about it. Your district has a new representative.
That's probably it.
No, because this was done with the old, so.
Oh.
So those two efforts are going on. We have had emergency situations, but we've never had a catastrophic situation with a lot of injuries and truly serious property damage. Now, if your home happened to be the one that had a tree come through it, it was truly serious. But we haven't had 25% of the city with that kind of a problem. And Those are the kind of things that can happen, the kind of things that we ought to be prepared for. The other committee that I'm involved with is the tree board, and the tree board continues to help with providing guidance for people with watering guidance over the summer. I don't know how others feel, how effective we were. I have personally received a lot of reports and complaints about people that just basically took no notice in or blew off water conservation reports. We've certainly started the water year in a favorable fashion, but I don't think we're going to be completely out of the woods by next year. So we probably ought to try and formalize something a little bit more aggressive than we've had in the past. And I hear that from the tree board, and I hear that from individuals. I'm constantly getting emails about sprinklers, businesses watering 7 days a week, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure how we try to deal with that. But I think it's something that we ought to address. And that's what I have to report.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that report. Next item is mayor's report. Next meeting, I'll have 3 or 4 committees that will have attended during the last 2 weeks. There was fire board meeting yesterday. Their audit was presented for the year. It looked good. I asked specifically the question if they had federal funds they had to audit, because so many places receive federal funds. They did not exceed the $750,000 on federal funds, so they didn't have a single audit. And then they are going to purchase a brush truck. Obviously, that's used more during the summer months. Excuse me. That fit within their budget as well too. Those are expensive replacements. Those type of vehicles, not as expensive as a ladder truck, but. And that was really the main thing that came out of the fire district meeting, those couple items. So any questions for me? Great. City manager report.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just have 4 items. Bruce had mentioned earlier, and that was in my list to talk to you about, just letting you know that, well, the mayor and I had met with UDOT, the project manager on the team, to start the environmental and consider all options and alternative widening of I-15, or if there's any other alternatives on how to address traffic on I-15. And it did include conversations regarding the interchange, the on and off ramp in that area as part of that. So they are moving along. They are starting the process and exploring all possibilities.
Do we get to weigh in that we don't want one like Layton and we don't want one like Lehigh?
Oh, I said I want a through turn everywhere here, or even just a giant roundabout. That would be pretty neat right there, right? We'll take out all those businesses. But anyway, yes, we get to weigh in and have those conversations. So it was great to meet the project manager. And
If they do a field trip for the staff, if you could maybe,
Like to come.
let the council know, I'd love to be involved in that, because we hear so many people ask so many questions, and, you know, I'm more of a visual person, so I'd like to be included in that.
very early on in terms of where they're going. I will share in our meeting, we just shared all the possibilities, even mentioning young power sports and what does that do to our traffic, and for them to consider that type of traffic, even maybe a pedestrian or a bike lane over at Lund Lane going over, not Lund Lane, Chase Lane. What were we talking about? Chase? Jennings Lane, of going to the west side, eventually connection there, because there's going to need to be that east-west. So anyway, it was a great conversation. They heard all of our concerns. They had a map, and it was a great conversation. So yes, I'll definitely include council on a future field trip. So that's the first item. Second item is just want to put a deadline on this to please submit any of your topics or ideas or issues you'd like to discuss with our state representatives by Friday next week, so we can put it on a council agenda to finalize our top 3 issues.
We want to get them in, get on the calendar early.
If you don't submit, then I'll just put my own on there and you'll have to discuss my issues. The mayor has.
By a week from Friday or Friday?
A week from Friday, so October 29th by 5, giving you a deadline, if you can do that. A reminder of the Utah Grizzlies Night, Saturday, October 23rd. All employees and residents are invited with the discounted tickets. I purchased my tickets, so my family will be going, and Bryce is purchasing their tickets. Have you all bought your tickets yet? All right, like it's posted on our Facebook page, 10/5, on October 5th, we posted it, so if you just hit the link, it'll send you to where you can purchase the tickets. So, appreciate Bryce setting that up. And then lastly, I just want to address this. I understand there are concerns regarding ballot harvesting within our city, and I just want to point out there is no investigation at this time regarding improper ballot collection during this election, and we're not aware of any other improper ballot collection in any of our previous city elections. Just want to report that. I understand there's some reports out there, but there is no investigation. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brent. I don't know of a need for a closed session, so unless there's anything else further to come up, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Council adjourned.